Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Doctors change lives every day, but what happens when life changes yours? A single injury, a sudden illness, your career, your income, your future can shift in an instant. The best physicians don't just plan for success, they protect it. At Set for Life Insurance, they believe financial security isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. True own occupation disability insurance ensures that no matter what happens, your future stays in your hands. Because protecting your income means protecting everything you've built. Visit drpodcastnetwork.co/setforlife today. Secure your future before life makes that choice for you. Welcome back to the podcast. We've got something different today. We're going to be talking about correctional health. So on today's episode, we've got Dr. Gregory Adaka. He is the medical director of the Correctional Health Services of Miami-Dade County. Correctional Health Services is part of the Jackson Health System. Dr. Adaka previously worked as an attending physician in the emergency department at Jackson Memorial, and he's actually practiced medicine over 3 decades on 3 different continents. So Dr. Adaka, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
First, what inspired you to go into correctional health?
Into the question, I do get that a lot. After being in emergency medicine for so long, over 25, 20 or plus odd years, perhaps I was getting a bit burnt out. And the call to move up into administrative medicine and the administrative side of healthcare had been a strong one for several years. And I decided to bite the bullet and do it. The hospital I'm still working is the county hospital, one of the largest in the country in Miami. And they run the healthcare services of the county jail, one of the largest, the 4th largest in the country. And an opportunity came up to be a director there. I'd recently acquired an MBA in health administration for a reputable school. And I thought this was an opportunity to grab both hands. So I went for it. I do work in a county hospital in a downtown urban center. And so a lot of our clientele are the people who are often overlooked by the healthcare system at large. And so working in a correction system is similar to where I'd worked for years in the past. And I think I have a heart for it, I suppose, so it fits in with my ethos. So there I am.
Is that typical for the correctional health facility to be run by the local health system? Is it like if we're working in a similar health system as you in like a Jackson Health System, are we likely to also be in the same system that runs the correctional health, or is that atypical?
I would say it's common.
Okay.
But it's not always the case. I think America is huge, isn't it? So across states and across counties, they've all got their different ways of doing things. A lot of the county jails and definitely a lot of the prisons across the country, their healthcare systems are run by private groups, not dissimilar to what you find in hospitals outside of corrections, where you've got these large players, your HCA and stuff like that. In a lot of cases, particularly when it comes to county jails, the county has a county hospital if it's a large county, and oftentimes there's an arrangement for them to provide staffing for the county jail as well. In our situation, I can speak for ours, it doesn't have to be run by the county. And there have been, of course, the steerings of the mayor's office should hand over to the sheriff, and the sheriff should do this and do that, or privatize it. There's always these things in the flux, but I can just say for many years, this has been the arrangement. The county hospital provides healthcare services to the county jail in this particular county.
Interesting. Can you walk us through a typical day? And when I say a typical day, I want you to get like granular, right? Like when I go to the hospital, I go into the parking lot. I have to swipe my card to get into the parking lot. And then I park. And then sometimes it has to be valeted because there aren't enough parking spots. And so then you show your ID to the security guard, right? So that's my day when I go to the hospital, right? So that's how granular I want you to get, including those security protocols. So walk us through a typical day for you.
It depends on where
a non-admin day, like a patient.
I ruined it because I don't see a lot of patients anymore.
Okay.
I don't.
When you were
In the system, since I started this job as a medical director, 90% of the job is not seeing any patients,
okay.
running the show. Having said that, early last year, because this is another issue with working in these systems on chronically short staffed, and I had to do a lot more clinical duties last year. So yes, there was a time when I was, if I can cast my mind back to that time, for that period of time, I would drive in, and of course there is no space in the parking lot because it's all taken up by the custody officers. That's one thing you've got to understand. In a jail or correction system, it's primarily, of course, corrections. So the majority of the staff are correction staff. They wear their uniform, they're like military or law enforcement. That's what they look like, and that's how they operate. They do have their own administrative staff who do not wear uniforms. And then there's a third leg, the healthcare providers, which in recent times in America has become a very big thing. So in our jails, for example, I would say at least a third of the staff you find in the jail at any one time are healthcare related. So sometimes you feel like you're working in a strange kind of hospital where you've got patients and then you just got security wandering around all over the place. But yes, there is a lot of them. But the bulk of the spaces in the parking lot are taken up by custody staff. That particular jail did not have enough parking space, so you park somewhere on the grass, walk across to the entrance, and go through what we often jokingly refer to as TSA. You come through security, take off all your jacket and everything that can't go in, because that's something you've got to get used to when working in corrections. There's so many things that you take for granted walking into work that you cannot take into work with you. Everything from large amounts of paperwork to a bag that you cannot see through. So you leave your briefcase, your backpack, or everything behind. I walk in with a laptop if I have to. Sometimes it's so frustrating I don't even bother to take the laptop with me. I've got a computer on the desk, and so even when I need to move around for meetings, I'll manage without the laptop. 90% of the people who work there cannot take a phone inside. I'm allowed to take my phone in because of my position. So there are a few people who, in quotes, are on the list. But everything gets scanned, including your phone and all the stuff you come in with. You finally make it through TSA, and then getting to your office or to the floor where you're going to see your patients in the medical housing unit or whatnot, you've got to go through a series of gates. There is no way you just walk through. Every gate has to be press a buzzer, wait for somebody at a remote location watching you on a camera and seeing the buzzers light up, open the gate for you to step through. That's how the jail is built. And if you're going to a distant part of the jail, then yes, you'll be walking through several gates like that before you get there. Settle down just like any other day in the office for any physician, in front of a computer, log on and start seeing your patients or your list that you're supposed to attend to and things like that. From then on, most of what you do is the same once you're in. And I like to tell that to people when they ask, is that a hospital is a hospital, patients are patients, and medical staff are medical staff, wherever you go, whatever country or continent you happen to work in, what environment you have to work in, some things remain the same. You've got sick people complaining, some are grateful that you're there, and some are not so grateful, and they're upset with you, and they'll let you know. And it's just the same old wherever I've been.
Yeah, sounds like practicing on Long Island. Yeah. Okay. All right. But before this, you were working in emergency medicine in like an underserved population. And so you were saying that like some of the stuff that you treat is similar to what you were treating when you were in the emergency department versus in a correctional facility.
Yes.
So, but what are some of the common issues that you see that would be different from what you were seeing before, or what not in emergency medicine, but rather like a primary care physician would be seeing out in the community? What's the stuff that's a little bit different?
To be honest, not a lot. I tell my physicians who report to me, and especially those new hires, you are a primary care provider. So see yourself as a primary care provider. You are the only primary care provider the inmates have. And because of the population you're serving, you may be the only primary care provider they've had for a very long time. There have been strange scenarios where inmates have come in, been seen by one of providers, sinister symptoms have showed themselves, they've gone for necessary tests, and we find they've got some sort of cancer or other disease. Caught it early enough to start treatment. And you say, had you not been in jail, it could be a completely different story.
Wow,
It's
that's really
sad reality. Yes, because
Yeah.
this person has not gone to see a doctor in years and maybe had this complaint, a bit of a belly pain or heartburn or some lump somewhere, and always ignored it, comes to jail, and then decides, I'm going to tell the doctor about this because it's bugged me for so long. And you find out, my goodness, how long have you seen blood in the toilet? Really? And then everything else starts after that. And you start seeing all these other symptoms, and you find that you've practically saved somebody's life. Sometimes. And there have been a couple of times when it's been too late. Several times during the year, you do get inmates who pass away from illnesses that have predated their presentation.
So it sounds like there are some inevitably complex conditions. And so I'm guessing that some of this can be handled by the healthcare practitioners at the facility, but then sometimes they need to be referred outside.
Absolutely.
So how do outside referrals work?
Interesting enough, the fortunate thing for us is that because we're tightly linked to the large county hospital, which is a center of academic excellence, we have all kinds of specialists close at hand. I can't say at our beck and call, but they are there.
Yeah.
And they're on a couple of other large hospitals around us where patients may go. If it's an emergency and they get called out by 911, then they go to the nearest emergency room. And there are about 3 or 4 different facilities that we have. 2 of the 3 of them belong to the county anyway. So when they go to those hospitals, you can always log on to Cerner, we use Cerner, and see their records and follow their progress while they're in the main hospital before they come back to our facilities. That's for emergency. If we're able to pick up certain signs and symptoms that make you think this patient needs some sort of specialty referral, we've got the specialists as well. And so you make the referral in the usual way, but it's a bit of a complicated process to get them from the jail to the hospital and back. As we always teach, remember, every time the inmates leave the secure facility of a jail, it's a risk to society at large because people often want to escape. It's a risk to the custody officers that are taking them there, because if they do decide to make a run for it, or they've made some prior arrangements with people on the outside, who's going to be the first a victim of such an attack is going to be custody. So although these things happen every day, inmates going in and out of the jail to the hospital and things like for various causes, custody take these trips very seriously indeed, and it's security, maximum security. So it's your responsibility as a physician not to be blasé about it or just throw out the referrals as and when, just because you feel like you should, or it's easier to do, it's something you don't want to bother with. You've got to take it all seriously and only use the referrals when you have to. Again, don't hold back from using the referrals if you need to, because that's the other end that people can sometimes go to, not having enough concern for your patients and feel they can handle it. And unfortunately, not in our jail, but you have heard these stories around the country of inmates being so badly treated by so-called medical professionals who don't really care enough. So yes, we do want our providers to take the necessary steps to get them seen by a professional. By a specialist. Once the decision has been made, we have a system where our teams liaise with the specialist administrative teams in the county hospital. They make the arrangements for their visits, but things get different at that point. You as a provider will be informed, obviously, when the appointment takes place, but you can never tell that to the patient, which is a strange thing to contemplate out there in the world. And of course,
that makes sense.
Yeah, because outside, doctor, when is the appointment? When is it going to be? All right, fine. You've got it for the 15th of July. Yay. He's happy or upset, depending on how far out it is and how well you want to make your press gainy sound good. In this instance, you cannot tell them when the appointment is going to be. Because what you don't want is the day that they have their appointment, they've spoken to, because they have access to the telephone, they do.
They arrange for their escape. Yeah,
that puts the correction officers at risk. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
That makes
absolutely.
sense. Yeah.
Some things are just done differently.
So making referrals, sometimes we make referrals because we're worried about medical legal risks, right? We're like, you know what, this belly pain, I really think it's nothing to worry about. I don't want to miss something. So that begs the question, how does the medical legal system work in the correctional facility? Is it like you're working at the VA where you're covered under the umbrella of the VA, and if they sue, they're literally suing the federal government? Does it work that way as well for the inmates?
In our case, it does, because we're county. Now, as I said, if you're working in a corrections facility that is staffed by a private group, then you probably won't get that cover. One of the things that I don't know if enjoy is the right word to use, but I've enjoyed working at Jackson. It's a county hospital, and as big, as expansive as it is, you do get that indemnity similar to working in the VA. If you sue a doctor in the county hospital, you're suing the county, not the doctor per se. And it's a sad reality that Florida is one of the states with the highest litigation. Not the highest, it's one of the higher medical legally litigious states in the country. But
because of all the snowbirds that come there from New York.
They bring their bad habits with them, don't they?
That's right.
New York has got quite a reputation. But what helps us is that the word is already out there among the legal teams across the county and across the state that if you got a client that comes from the county hospital, forget it, you're not going to get any money. You get something, you're going to get a lot. And so that it incentivizes people from the ambulance chasing attorneys from pursuing cases in the county hospital. That's not to say that nothing happens. And in years I've been there,
certainly frivolous lawsuits are now.
It's
very expensive for the attorneys to sue. And so if they think they're not going to get anything,
millions back, they wouldn't bother. So when you do get sued, and as I said, in my years at this facility at Jackson, I've seen a couple of lawsuits. So incidents do occur.
Yeah.
But by and large, you're not scared of the frivolous lawsuit the way you would be if you're working out in the private sector. And we have the same sort of protections working in the county jail as well. However, it's often said we serve a population where every one of your patients has got a lawyer at his beck and call. Remember, they are inmates. And all they need to do is call the public defender and say, I don't like the way I've been treated. I've got my 8th Amendment rights and they're being trampled upon and this and that whatnot. And the public defender will come in and say, is this really going on? And especially with the sort of reputation that has often gone on in several parts of our corrections across the country, you don't want to be that facility that's got the spotlight on it. We've got enough trouble as it is to have any of that added on. And so you can't be careless. Let me say, you can't be careless.
But it's a public defender, not a personal injury attorney. This is someone who's chosen one path over another path. And so there's a different person that they've got on the other line than
it's a different person. It's a completely different. Yeah, I'm not even gonna go there.
Different code of ethics and thinks about problems differently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want to make sure that their client is treated fairly and appropriately. That's why they became public defenders, not because they're ambulance chasers. Yes, you don't have complete immunity, but it's not the same. In working in the community, we're sometimes hamstrung by insurance. We can't do this. We need a prior authorization. We can't do that. They didn't get the PA, right? All these problems, right? Hey there, it's Brad. As someone who's passionate about podcasting, I've always thought there should be more support for physicians who want to share their stories and expertise. That's why we're launching Doctor Podcast Network.
We're bringing together a community of physician podcasters with one goal in mind: to provide the tools, connections, and resources you need to grow your show. So whether you've been podcasting for a while or maybe you're just starting, we've designed this network to support you every step of the way, and we're going to help each other rise, not compete.
If this sounds like something you'd benefit from, we'd love for you to join us as we get closer to launch. So you can sign up at drpodcastnetwork.co for early access. Stay tuned for more details in the coming weeks. Really looking forward to what we can create together. Doctor Podcast Network, where doctors podcast.
Doctor Podcast Network, where doctors podcast.
Doctor Podcast Network, where doctors podcast.
So what are some of the limitations that you haven't touched upon already in treating incarcerated individuals?
Okay. There's a difference between working in a jail and working in a prison in America. The county jail system, officially, you're holding on inmates for 1 year, 364 days. Having said that, there is a significant population within the jail who've been in jail for several years, 3, even 4 years. But the majority of them are there for less than a year. Now, that's a different medical responsibility you have as a practitioner to those who are treating people in prison, who are there for lengthy sentences. The condition is non-emergency. It's not a threat to life or limb. It's completely elective. Then you do not have a responsibility to treat it. The thinking being that you can deal with that when you get out. That's the county jail. If you're in prison, however, and the patient's got a long sentence, and they've got some serious condition or whatnot, and they need a heart transplant, what are you going to do? Wait for the end of this 5 or 10 year, 15-year custodial sentence, then give him a heart transplant? He's going to die. So you have those considerations. Sometimes there are some gray areas where we have to look. It's not life and limb threatening, but long and short, there is a difference. So although you don't have the constraints of pre-authorization, you do have the constraints of what is your responsibility to take care of when you're in the county jail, as opposed to when the patient is outside and all bets are off. You're a doctor, patient sick, treat him, make him better. That's your responsibility. Inside in the county jail system, there's always the issue of if it's not an emergency or something that needs to be dealt within the next 1 year, then I do not have a responsibility to look after that. He can take care of that when he gets released if it's not life or limb threatening. But having said that, a lot of our patient load come from an environment where they have not had adequate medical attention before they got arrested. And so when they come in, they often come in with an expectation, oh, now I'm in jail, I'll look after this, I'll take care of that. I've got lipoma on my back, get rid of it. We're not here to treat lipoma as lumps and bumps. But if that lipoma gets infected, turns into an abscess, yeah, we'll take care of that. And that's the decision that you have to make all the time.
So it's a question of the murky area is handled by you rather than, is this a good way to use resources? We have somewhat abdicated to the insurance companies because they put so many limitations on us. But,
Absolutely.
or rather, it happened.
It's been taken
So
from
we don't
us.
have to.
Yeah.
We don't have to think about this stuff because those limitations are already in place. But you're saying the limitations are very different. How to use the resources and what you've touched upon in other ways, right? Like, am I going to be putting these other people that I work with at risk for taking this person out of prison, for this referral, for imaging, for X, Y, and Z? So it's more ethical considerations and utilization of resources and personnel.
The really big deal is utilization of resources. Because if you're a lazy physician, it's much easier just to press a button and send him out, get somebody else to deal with it in the ER. And I've worked in the ER for donkey's years, same county and many other places over the years. And people come in, you feel they should not be in my ER. This can be dealt with by primary care. Or if they're an inmate, should be dealt with in the jail. Why have they come here? But it might be easy, but is it right? And that's something I try to breathe down the necks of. I provide, use our resources appropriately because it's expensive and there's always that risk, isn't there?
Tell me something that surprises your non-correctional physician colleagues about working in correctional medicine. Like when you're hanging out with your physician friends, what is something that you've mentioned that really surprises people?
My office is a jail, maybe. That was the first thing that surprised me. I have a couple of places because there are 3 large facilities that I cover. Also, there's a separate location for so-called headquarters, which is purely administrative for custody and for the healthcare providers as well. That is not a jail. When I go over there, it's a regular office. You swipe your way in and you go in. But most of the time I spend in my own personal office is actually in one of the jails, and the whole of that admin floor is just another cell block. It's been converted into offices, and there's a court in front, but it's a cell block. You look around the room, the door is different, but the window's still got bars on it. It's as narrow as this. You got the bright fluorescent light to keep you company, and the walls are brick. Reminds me of when my daughter went to college, a very nice college for that matter, but as a freshman, the room they threw them into reminded me of the inside of a prison cell, and that's what my office looks like. It's painted and all that, but yeah, it's a converted prison cell. So that
And you
people
paid through the nose for it too.
in the college.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Gosh, that's a whole other story. But yes, that shocked a lot of the parents who brought their kids there. And so, is this what it looks like? You've been to American colleges, I'm sure, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say this all sounds incredible to the listener and they want a piece of it. So now they're looking for work in correctional health, be it in jail or prison. What does a job search look like? Like, where would we even begin to look for a job?
Okay, because prisons and county jails are controlled or owned so far still, the majority of them are owned by the government, whether that's a state prison or a federal penitentiary or a county jail. It's a government facility. And so if you're looking for a federal place, you'd go to USA Jobs. If it's a state prison, you just Google the state prison and it'll come up and they'll show you how to, apply for that government job. In my case, it was a county. I got into it because I was already working for the county and ads are on the county website. I don't know of any particular recruiter who specializes in corrections medicine. So if you go to the regular recruiters,
that's why you're chronically understaffed. Because they need a headhunter out there looking for people and putting their cells on boards, right? One of our previous sponsors, Beginley Health. That's where you find physician jobs. Maybe they should be putting it on there.
Absolutely. No, having said that, I'm not throwing them a bus or anything. When we do want jobs, they know where to put the jobs out. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't know of any particular recruiter that specializes in corrections medicine.
Yeah.
Any of the large recruiters will throw you anywhere. When I was job seeking, I used to work in New Hampshire and planning to move to Florida and everything. I was looking for various jobs. I did see corrections jobs coming up on the various websites. At that time, I had no interest. I never would have believed that a few years down the line, I would be the director of a county jail. So they're out there in the usual places you'd look for a job.
So if you were speaking to a physician who was looking for this type of a job, what advice would you give them?
Medicine is medicine wherever you go, but there are certainly some differences. If you worked looking after the underserved, whether that's homeless, inner city county hospital, that sort of thing, if you worked in that environment before, rural medicine in some of the far-flung corners of America, if you've been in that sort of environment where there's low income, a lot of depravity, the sort of illnesses that you see there, the sort of infections, oftentimes illnesses that are preventable, but have been ongoing for a long time. Poorly treated diabetes, poorly treated hypertension, and every now and then you get the odd tumor that turns up because somebody hasn't gone for his routine checks, that sort of thing. If you're used to that sort of thing anyway, then you'll find it no different working in corrections. If all you're used to is the fancy suburban joints where everything is available for you and everybody looks after themselves, then yes, you might be surprised at some of the pathologies that present themselves to you in this environment. That's what I say, get ready for it. You will see a lot of real medicine working in these places.
Are there jobs for specialists, maybe part-time?
Not really.
Okay.
In our shop, for example, we do get dentists that come in. We have an arrangement with the University of Miami. We have a couple of specialists that we work with from the county hospital or the University of Miami hospital who come into the jail to do some specialist treatments. But by and large, everything that requires a specialist is shipped out to the large county hospital where they'll be seen in the hospital rather in the jail itself. I would say 99% of the providers within the facility, as I said earlier, are primary care providers. If you love family medicine, you love internal medicine, you're an internist, then yes, this is the place for you. It's what am I doing in a place? I've been in emergency medicine all my life, and I'm so used to the idea of patients coming to me with things that are not an emergency. And I tell them, you don't need to be here. Go and see your primary care doctor. I can't say that anymore. You're the primary care doctor. And that's primarily what we do in corrections health. The only spin on it, of course, as I've said, is the sort of pathologies that you see and the issues of security. But yes, it's primary care medicine. We do have medical housing units. It goes by various names. The infirmary, depends on which facility you're in, which are like a hospital floor, inpatients. We do have those sort of services as well. And I mustn't forget psychiatry. We have a big presence of psychiatry in the jail and in most correctional facilities around the country, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
I would say it's fortunate that it's there, right? Like these are the people
there.
that need it the most.
It's fortunate that it's there. I think what's sad is that these patients are in jail in the first place. That's the sad reality of the state of affairs in the country. There are so many people who are incarcerated who have psychiatric illness. And when you scratch beneath the surface, the only reason why they were arrested is because it was a manifestation of the psychiatric illness. The guy's homeless, he's not taking his meds, and he's got schizophrenia. He wanders into some place where he shouldn't wander, a restaurant or anywhere. Somebody calls the cops, come along, move along. He refuses to move along. He speaks at the police officer. That's assault. He's going to be arrested. Where did they take him? To the jail. Fortunately, though, in the jail, in our jail, he will see a psychiatrist. He'll see a behavioral psychologist. He'll see all sorts of things, regular psychiatrists and all that. And he'll get his medications. And sometimes it's the best place for them to be. We have a huge psychiatry unit within one of our facilities. And here's a fun fact. The county has a large psychiatry unit attached to Jackson. Fantastic facility. They've got like 140 odd beds in that place. But yet they've got more than 3 times as many beds in the county jail, in the psychiatry unit, in the jail. It's not just a few wings of the jail where the psychiatrists go and visit. It is an official bona fide psychiatry unit in the jail, which is actually larger, a lot larger than the county hospital psychiatry unit. But again, it's a reflection of the state of affairs in the country, where so many people with psychiatric illness end up falling foul of the law and are within our correction system. If we built it the other way, where we had a larger psychiatry system set up, then they would probably go there, or ought to go there, rather than get arrested by the police and end up in our jails. But we work with what we've got.
This has been extremely informative. And I know that you're a religious man, so I'm going to say, God bless you for doing what you do. and taking care of the people you take care of.
Thank you. Yes, I suppose I do. Well, it informs me, it motivates me, it makes me who I am. Yes.
So
No
God
doubt
bless you
that.
for what you do and taking care of the people that you do who need you so much, because clearly you're driven by purpose here. And so thank you for doing that. And thank you for taking the time to come on the show and teach us about correctional medicine. So you had said before that you wanted to get more into public speaking. So if one of the listeners wants to reach out to you, how do we find you?
Go to my website. It's gregoryadaka.com. That's the simplest, easiest way to find me.
ADAKA, just like you say it. Dr. Gregory Adaka, thank you for your time and all you do for your patients.
Thank you very much, Bradley. Great to speak to you.
Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means you either fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please share it or like it or comment on a social media post or write us a 5-star review, something. It would really help me out. And maybe what you learned from this episode can help someone else too. The views expressed in this episode are those of the interviewer and interviewee and don't represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting make it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice or financial advice or really any advice. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.